Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Loading Mag NUFC for another away days. Feel like we've been doing these so many over the past few days, but these fixtures have been coming thick and fast. And look, yes, I have a new background. One or two mentioned it last night on the Deadline show. If you can see in the corner, that corner, you can see that my kitchen is being massively pulled apart at the moment. So, yeah, they've been digging into the walls and all sorts. It's a bit of a mad one at the moment. So, yeah, living a little bit rough, shall we say, just for a few days while things get ready and start to pick up. But look, I don't know whether we should be talking about the Liverpool game, but I think one or two are still reeling from that game. It was a tough pill to swallow with that late goal that denied us of a deserved point. But look, we have to, as a club, as a group of players, bounce back. And Eddie Howe has said that's what he expects. The players have said that's what they expect. So it's going to be really, really interesting to preview this game tonight. And of course, as always, the best way we always preview a game on away days is by having expert opinions from the opposition. And I'm absolutely pleased and delighted to welcome in from back of the nest all the way over from the States. We've got T joining us again. We'll bring him in. How you doing, T? There he is.
How you doing, man? Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too, mate. Yeah, good to meet you.
How's everything?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We're just talking about the game, talking about Liverpool midweek. It was a tough pill to swallow from our perspective, losing so late. I mean, I don't know if you caught the game. I don't know if you managed to watch it. What were your thoughts about that game?
I watched most of it. I get to see the end. Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
I watched most of it. I got to. I thought it was a great match from what I saw, man. Everything that you all were doing, tightly contested. I like the fact that you all didn't sit back against a team like Liverpool. You all tried to take it to them. You know what I'm saying? I can appreciate it against those sides. If anything, I'm sure others are watching the way that you all handle yourself in that type of match, to where you're not just sitting back, absorbing pressure, praying not to give up a goal and then scoring on a counterattack. You know what I'm saying? So it was refreshing to see you guys play that way. It's good to see Isak get out there too. I mean, he's dangerous, man. So I didn't get to see the very end of the match. Apparently it was ruled out on offside, I believe.
Yeah. So we should have been 2-0 up. We should have been 2-0 up. We had an opportunity with Isak again. He went through, he put a couple of defenders on their backs and then stuck it in the back of the neck. It was a great finish. But unfortunately, he was in a position where he was just apparently millimeters offside. I'm not sure about it. A lot of Newcastle fans will say the same. Already people in the chat are saying about Liverpool losing their class and saying, the way that Klopp has gone on is unacceptable. So, they're in agreement with us that we should have at least got a point from that game. That is for sure. But look, I don't want to spend too much time on that. Welcome in, Richie, joining us from the
Even to you, all right, mate?
Yeah, T's good. I think T, you're slightly delayed on your response. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, what we'll do, we'll get straight into it. We'll get into the Palace build up because you guys, you've had a decent start and probably could have been a little bit better against Brentford midweek. So, talk us through that 1-0 up, cruising. It looked like you're on the way to 3 points, and then you get hit with a bit of a sucker punch. Like, talk us through it. Tell us not just about that game. Tell us about that game in particular, but how your season's gone so far.
Well, it's interesting to talk about that because we actually kind of talked this on our match reaction show immediately afterwards. And it was a little bit of, I guess you say, differences in opinion depending on who was speaking. But the thought of it was that we were controlling the game up 1-0. And at a certain point, a substitution was made. A few substitutions were made where we converted to going to 3 at the back. And with maybe 10 plus minutes to go. And all of a sudden at that point, we just started absorbing crazy pressure. They started getting way more opportunities. I mean, prior to those substitutions, Brentford only had 1 shot on goal. 1 shot. But as soon as we made those substitutions, at least from what I saw, as soon as we made those substitutions, they started getting opportunity after opportunity. We ended up giving up that tying goal, and I honestly gave up the game winning goal to Rico. So like it doesn't make sense why I think we make that change at least that soon. You know what I'm saying? If we're going to try to see out a game and go 3 at the back or 5 at the back or however you want to say it, maybe with 5 minutes left, something like that. But to go for like between 10 to 15 minutes and just invite that type of pressure and stuff, especially from a team like Brentford who's got guys who can score goals. Like Ivan Toney's amazing. So it was just a tough one, man. It's a tough one to see out, and hopefully tactically we can do better in the future.
Definitely, and it seemed that way that you were quite unlucky. But yeah, the subs always looked like it had an impact on the way in which you played after that point. But Richie, I'll come in for your opinion. Really, I don't know how much you've seen of Crystal Palace this season, but what's your kind of assessment of Palace and how they've started this season so far?
I haven't seen much of them, to be honest, this year. But I think the results have been a bit hit-y miss sort of thing. There's performances when they've looked really good, and then there's been other one that I suppose it's a bit like what Newcastle has sometimes been in the past. There's been one week when Newcastle have had an absolutely fantastic result, and then you hope that you've got a fantastic opportunity to build on it the following week, and then you have an absolute out of character performance sort of thing. So I think what you've got to remember is that there's a lot of teams. Obviously you look at the big 6 sort of thing if you go from that, and then under that there's a like a minute, the other 14 is technically another league in itself, where there's so many teams on its day can beat each other. So it's like, I think, I can't remember who it was from the Newcastle point of view, who turned around and said, "Oh, so you'll be expecting to win on Saturday?" And then no, because you've got to respect every single team you turn up, because it's the Premier League and anything's possible on its day. So you look at Brentford that turned Man United over a few weeks ago, and haven't really looked the same since that. They were lucky to get a draw against yourselves. Possibly could have nicked it, with the Ben Mee chance literally in stoppage time, which was a bit similar to our situation with Wolves the other day, where we got equalised, and then obviously Elliott hit the bar as well. So it seems to be, the seasons are a bit like parallel here in a little way between similar points or at the stage of the season, similar results. Where there's obviously we've had the one good win at the start of the season, had some really good performances, but just hadn't got the results to back up how well Newcastle have played in those other games. I don't know, that's probably what T can probably, we might be able to relate to that from as a comparison between the two teams. Obviously, we know Zaha's started off on fire this season, 4 goals this season already. I think what Palace need to do is try and get some goal threat from other parts of the pitch. There's possibly, I know that Zaha thrives on that pressure, but at the same time, you don't always want to be relying on Zaha, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, you want to have success. You want Zaha to be successful. You want him to play well, but you don't want him to be the only one that's playing well. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Definitely. And look, we'll stick with Zaha. I mean, I had a conversation with D himself from back of the nest as well, and we were talking about Zaha because I still think of Zaha as your main man. Your main man, like Richie said, that's going to make the difference. He actually didn't. Yeah. He actually didn't think that. He thought something slightly different. He didn't think that Zaha was the main man. He thought there was 1 or 2 other players that were kind of considered just as important. Would you agree with that, or are you still of the mindset that Zaha is your main man at Palace and is the talisman of the team?
I mean, I think yeah, he's definitely the main man. I think the difference is, and I think it kind of depends on how D views it, but like I think there's a difference between being the main man and being the only man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I still think he's the main man, and you could tell by the production that he's given us even this year in a contract season. You know what I'm saying? Like he's going out, he's giving us all, he's leading us with his goal scoring, his intensity. You know, like that. Like we're not the same team without him. Can we be successful? Can we compete? Can we win matches without him? Yes. Is it significantly harder? Yes. You know what I'm saying? So I get where D is coming from with that. We have way more talented players around the squad this year and last year than in years past. So in a lot of ways, the burden is named for Will, as it has been in the past. But the thing is, the cream rises to the top, and regardless of that, like he's always going to be that high quality player who stands out. So I still think he's the main man. I just don't think he's the only man. He doesn't have as much pressure as he did in prior years, where he was just the only thing. Like teams go in and say, "Hey, just worry about him. Nobody else is going to hurt us." I don't think you can do that as much with us now compared to the past.
It's funny you mentioned that, T, and I think Pete will agree with this. Well, I've just said the similarities between both clubs. You go back before, 12 months even, before the takeover, and Newcastle were in a similar boat. You stopped Alan Saint-Maximin, and you 9 times out of 10 stopped Newcastle. It's like you're saying there, if you stopped Zaha, you used to stop Palace. But obviously now both teams are getting, important chess pieces around as well. So you can't, obviously when we had Bruno came in, we as Newcastle fans, we were able to see straight away the amount of space that Maximin had on the wing because you couldn't double team him all the time and stuff like that. So, because you have that extra quality on the park, it creates the space elsewhere. So we're seeing that as Newcastle fans, and, you look at Palace, you've got Eze, you've got Olise around him as well, who are, these are other people who are potential goal winning, people for you, players for you. So it's quite simple. Obviously we've had the takeover. It's took us a bit more advanced than probably where Palace are, recruitment-wise, should I say. But it doesn't mean you're still not going to have integral parts that are similar players in both squads. And we do seem to match each other as we, as I've just said, the recruitment side of things as well. So with players.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we definitely be I can say more frugal or fickle with some of our options, to make sure that we find the right guys for the right price. But like you said, it's just important, like getting those guys, getting the right guys to fit the what you're trying to do as a team, and getting those creative guys, those guys that are a threat. I mean, it was interesting because in that Brentford game in particular, that was one of the first games I really got to notice the way that they played both of our wings. With Zaha on one side and Olise on the other side. Every time they touched it on the wing, they had 3 guys looking straight. They had the fullback to that side, the center back to that side, and the midfielder looking at him from the inside. And it's like that's the type of attention that now Michael Olise is getting on the opposite side that we've never had before in a lot of situations with Wilf when he's played in there. So it's made a huge difference for sure.
How good is Michael Olise to you? Because for me, I watched him at Selhurst Park last season when Newcastle played Palace and it was a 1-1 draw. And I always thought he was a good player, but watching him live and watching him up close, I couldn't believe how good he was for the age he is. You know, since that point, and that was kind of early on in the season, how has he developed as a player at Palace, and you know, how good is he now? You know, you're talking alongside him as a player that influences the game like Zaha. Is that the case? And has he got the ability to go beyond Zaha because of the fact he's only 21 years old?
I think the thing about Michael Olise that is so enticing is that he's good enough right now to a level to tribute at a high clip at this level, and he's only that age. You know, I think looking at Wilf, when Wilf was in this situation, you know, Wilf was playing this trade at a lower level. You know what I mean? Like Olise is doing this in the Prem, and he's got so much potential. You can see it. He just reeks this ability to make the game look easy with the ball at feet. Like it's just simple for him. You know, he's just a different class when it comes to, you know, comparatively like having a Jordan Ayew over there. When Michael Olise just has the ball, like anything can happen as far as creating for others, creating for himself. Watching him in Brentford, you know, Brentford was his first Premier League start of this season. He started in our cup match against Oxford and played a good amount, but this was his first Premier League match, and he was rusty. You could see it, man. Rusty. With him looking rusty, he was still one of the brightest players on the pitch. I mean, he had one shot that he curled and it hit off the post. He had another beautiful chance that got saved. He had a great pass to Zaha that almost ended up in a shot on goal for a possible chance. So he's got this ability about him that makes him this untapped. He's still raw. Like that's the thing about him. He's still young. He's still raw. He's got to work on his body. He's still a little bit frail, I guess you say. I mean, he's a kid. You know what I'm saying? And then he's got to work on his weak foot. You know what I'm saying? Like once he gets to that point, puts on some weight, gets better on his right side, because I think right now a lot of people expect him to go to that left foot a lot. Class, I think this could be a great start for him if he continues on the track that he's going. But he's got to stay healthy too. He has struggled with injuries. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he started out with us last year injured with his back, I believe, and then he started out this season injured with a foot injury. So I think a big thing for him is he hasn't really had a preseason with us, a full preseason with us yet either. So I can shudder to think what he could be if he stays where he be.
Yeah, a full preseason is crucial, and you know, that's kind of switches us nicely really to talk about one or two Newcastle players, because look, Rich, I'll come to you. Is that we were banking on Callum Wilson having a proper preseason, and he did, and we thought, you know what, we've got him for the season, and 3 games in, he picks up a hamstring injury that puts him out for a period of time. However, what we do have is in replacement, and you know what I'm going to say to you as well. You know who I'm going to bring up at this point. We have brought in a fantastic replacement in Alexander Isak to come in when Callum Wilson is injured, and boy, did he come in and make a difference for Newcastle United on Wednesday night. He was terrific. And, you know, here, I think this was the goal that was ruled out, the second goal. But his class and his quality was there for all to see. He looked a real special player. Look, in your opinion, Richie, how good was his performance on Wednesday night, and how much are you excited to see him on Saturday?
I said it last night. I was sure. For me, obviously, because we didn't get anything from the game, obviously, for 97 minutes of the game, we did anyway, should we say. We did get something from the game, but I think on a personal level for himself, to have the goal that he scored, he looked like he'd been training with the team for weeks and weeks. He's been there since the start of the season. So for that to be off a few training sessions, so he doesn't really know the lads, he doesn't really know like the wavelength possibly people are working on and stuff like that. But I think if you look at the way he's performed, we might as well say both of his finishes were cool and collective finishes. We mentioned last night that you've got to remember that Alisson is also one of the best one-on-one goalkeepers in world football. And to finish like that, so easy past him, it was just phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? He's the press that he did up front as well. His movement off the ball as well. Seriously, you couldn't ask for a better debut, bar getting something from the game as well. That was probably the only thing that ruined it being the perfect debut for him. I just thought he was absolutely immense.
Yeah, he really was. Like it was so refreshing to see a striker up top that had a little bit of everything. I love Callum Wilson to bits. I think he's a proper striker. I think he's the perfect backup that when Harry Kane's not fit for England, that you bring him on in a game and you give him the opportunity to produce his quality. He is that good. But Alexander Isak brings a different area of quality to his game. He has everything. He's big, tall. We were talking to you offline before we started, and you were talking about how he's quite slender. He's not physically big. He's quite a skinny guy. But actually, what I saw on Wednesday is, regardless of his size in terms of not necessarily being big, he's actually quite strong on the ball. And he was going toe to toe with Van Dijk and Gomez at the back, and he was really giving them just as much as he was getting. And I really like that about him. But what he's got is blistering pace in and behind. His ability to press high is very, very good. And the amount of sprints he made in that game as a lone striker, I think, I'd love to see the numbers on that, because it was absolutely crazy. But in terms of what he gives to the team, the one area, and Richie, I don't know if you agree with this, the one area that I think he exceeds Callum Wilson is actually the fact that he can link the play, because he's so good with the ball at his feet. Callum Wilson's good in and around the box. He knows where the goal is. He'll put the ball in the net. But what I found with Isak is that the little one-touch passing, the little playing in triangles, he's able to do that because he's with quality on the board. He's a good passer. He's good. He's got good control on the board. He's got good skill. He can beat players. That's the one thing I would say that Callum Wilson is lacking. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think the main difference, if you look at Callum Wilson, obviously we've always known he's a fox in the box, as we call them over here in England. He's look at his first goal of the season against Forest. That movement to get in front of Newcastle. He's done it before, other seasons for Newcastle, and also when he's been at Bournemouth and stuff as well. The one thing is that Callum Wilson, he's still for me an old school centre forward. He can come a bit shorter and hold the ball up. He can win his fair share of aerial battles. But what you'll see is he'll hold that ball up and he'll start a move off. And he's the sort of striker who'll be there to finish the move off. Whereas, as what you just said, Pete, you're right. Isak can be involved at all different stages of the move. He could come deep, win the ball to hold it up, relieve the defence, lay it off. But then, not necessarily have to run straight towards the box. He could run out into space and then link it up again. It's he links up at various different stages in their half. And he can supply the assists as well. It's not all about being in the box for the finish like Wilson has to be. He's got the movement to drag people out as well. The amount of times we saw on both. If you look at both of his finishes, really, one's down the left channel and one's down the right channel. Realistically, there's nothing in that middle bit of the pitch, really. Even if his first goal, yes, it's slightly to the right of centre of the goal, but it's just to the just the far left of the inside right channel. So he can run all the channels as well. So it goes to show how versatile a player he is, that he's not just a replacement for Callum Wilson. He's also someone who could play with Callum Wilson as well. So it gives Eddie Howe plenty of options how he wants to line him up. So it's not necessarily saying he's come in to usurp Wilson. It's I think if he wants to keep the same formation, I'd probably say that there's not going to be many times that your club record signings are ever going to be second choice to Callum Wilson. It might be a game set up slightly different to the opponent, so you might prefer it, but it's very, very rare you're going to have that. We heard from Sven Botman the other day, there's going to be times when he has to sit on the bench. He might not like it, but he'll accept it because obviously it's there's different opponents and the coach might say different things and stuff like that. But I was just thinking there, you were talking about Isak and Van Dijk on Wednesday night and how good they were in the battles and tussles together. Can you imagine being on a Newcastle training ground on a day-to-day basis and see Sven Botman and Alexander Isak going head-to-head every single day? Two guys at the start of their careers, like they're both 22 are the right, Pete? Yeah. So that they're going to grow at the same time with the club. So their battles in training, it's going to do wonders for both of them. Their careers full stop, not just for the club, but we're talking like their international futures and what Newcastle can do achievement-wise going forward as well. Do you know what I mean? You'd have two world-class players like that battling each other on a day-to-day basis can only be fantastic for Newcastle United.
I'd be worried if those two were up against each other in training. I'd be saying no. Put them on the same team. I don't want them injuring each other. I don't want Alexander Isak stretching Botman to the point where he pulls the hamstring, and I wouldn't want Botman cleaning Isak out to make sure that he's injured. That's the last thing I wouldn't want. But look, T, you were talking about Isak before we came on. I know that you kind of, you're watching him as a player and you like what you saw. Let's be honest. Like, is he a player that worries you going into the game tomorrow? Is he the main guy that you're worried about, or are there one or two others?
I mean, if you want to call a spade, how are you not worried about a guy like that, man? Like, we're talking about a kid who, at I think like the age of 17, was compared to Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Yeah. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? That's how good this kid. That's how good they knew he was going to be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's been at some premier clubs prior to coming to Newcastle with Dortmund and Real Sociedad. So he's played at a high level since a teenager. You know what I mean? So I think his transition to the Premier League is about as smooth as you would think it would be, because he's has the experience a lot of seasons in the league, man. So yeah, he's definitely a guy that is he the only one? Absolutely not. Because Newcastle is a good team. They got a good squad. I mean, now, depending on like what we talked about earlier, depending on some of the injury situations, there may be some guys that we may not have to deal with. Who knows? That's just the truth. But, I mean, when you're going to – and I think that's a big part of Premier League this year, is that you can see from the transfer window, the level of play is going up in the Premier League, man. You got a newly promoted team that just went out and signed 22 players, man, and dropped almost $200 million. Like, what are we talking about? So I think it's a testament to the Premier League, the level of play that you're seeing week in and week out. There are no games, So I think when you go into a match like this, you're about some of the guy that can score goals on you, the Isaks, the St. Maximans. Lord help me if Almiron scores another goal against us tomorrow. Like, I don't know what it is, but Miguel Almiron loves game against us. Loves a goal against Palace. we'll see what happens, man. But no, I think it's definitely got to be an overarching effort. Now, I think Vieira is smart enough to know that it's not just about one guy with the team, because you all have a talented squad with a lot of guys that have really, really good quality.
Definitely, and there's already a few chants going on in the chat. Chris has already started it. The old Simon's finished it off quite nicely. Chris, what I want to know, and you'll be able to answer this because you're in the away end at Anfield on Wednesday, was that chant sang in the away end, and how often was it sung? Because I cannot wait to be in the away end very soon to be singing that song for Alexander Isak. So make sure you put in the chat whether it was regularly sang on the game at Anfield. That is for sure. But look, Alexander Isak, I think everyone's got that anticipation and excitement about watching him. He's been the talk of everything on the back of that game at Anfield, with the pundits, with the media, with opposition like yourself, with everybody in the Newcastle United fan base. He's a really exciting talent, and we're super happy to have him there. But you touched on the likes of Alan Saint-Maximin and Bruno Guimaraes. I'm not sure what the situation is with Bruno Guimaraes and Alan Saint-Maximin. As far as Eddie Howe said, it's going to be a case of sort of touch and go with those two players. We're not sure if they're going to be fit. It might well be a late decision on those two players. Richie, if it was a touch and go situation, would you be the one to kind of say, yep, let's get them in, let's risk it for the game at Palace? Or would you kind of say, you know what, let's wait and hold it out and give it another week until the game at West Ham?
Do you know what I think? We were talking about the stretch of games that Newcastle have got coming up. I think the next 7 are pretty much all very winnable by Newcastle standards, and it's these are the ones we should be looking to win. However, you look at, I think, and I'm not just saying this from my own point of view, I think there's a lot of Newcastle's thought this as well. When we saw the team on Wednesday night, we didn't give much hope. And hell, the one glint of hope we had was that Isak was was starting. The fact that obviously Bruno was missing, Sam Maxwell was missing, Wilson was missing, and we were just thinking, if we get anything from this, it's a godsend. And you know what? We nearly did. And I don't think you could fault any of the players that played on Wednesday night. It shows that the team is actually stronger depth-wise than we've ever been in a long time. Yeah. Obviously, it also highlighted the fact that beyond when that depth comes in and you have to make your substitutions, that depth's not that deep, if that makes sense as well. It still needs these extra replacements, and that's what will happen when you get to January and next summer to replace those sort of quality players that we need in there as well. But as we mentioned, I think we've got probably a good 16, 17 players who are really good quality players. For me, that if they were, say, 90% fit, I'd probably put them on the bench at best. Unless they're 100% fit, I wouldn't risk it. At the end, I would hate them. How many times have we seen people come back a little bit too early, and then obviously they're out even longer? It's happened with Callum Wilson before as a prime example. Is it worth it just because you're at home? And for me, I would rather say play a slightly weaker team at home than it would be if you're away. Because obviously, I would. And this is no disrespect to T here in Crystal Palace. I think possibly West Ham away next week is a slightly tougher game for us because obviously Newcastle and St James's Park at the minute, it's an absolute fortress. It's going back to how it was under Kevin Keegan, how it was under Sir Bobby Robson. It's just a complete different animal now, to the level that it's levels better than what I've just mentioned from the Entertainer days and Sir Bobby Robson days. And Pete, you know that as well. You've been in the crowd on many of the same games I've been there as well. It's just been it's a different beast now. So, and if you look at the points that we've earned in the Premier League at home since Eddie Howe's taken over, especially this calendar year, there's only Man City, Liverpool that took maximum points off us, and Watford, who got a very, very late draw in the first home game of this calendar year. everybody else that's come to St James's Park so far has been beaten. So, obviously, I forget about Man City the other week as well, but obviously that was we got a point off them, so we did better than we did last season. So we've progressed again on that. So Newcastle is a fortress now. So I would rather have a slightly weaker team going in, not having, say, for example, I have a feeling that Bruno could be back, but I think they might not risk Saint-Maximin. He might make the bench. I don't think they might start him. If there's any like inkling of the clues that the club have given us during the week on how the recovery's gone. We saw at the start of the week, Bruno, we mentioned it briefly last night, had the oxygen tank on the mask and in the recovery chamber. And then Saint-Maximin had it on Thursday. So you wonder if that Bruno's slightly ahead of Saint-Maximin on that front. So yeah. I think there's more chance of Bruno starting than Saint-Maximin. If both make it, and Eddie thinks they're 100% good to go, fantastic. You know what I mean? That's great. But I think probably Bruno's the one just to the head. And as Ryan Fraser highlighted the other night when he came on, when he played the game against Liverpool, and when he came on at Wolves as well, he's a more than adequate stand-in for him. Obviously, I wouldn't say he's a long-term. He doesn't got the long-term effects that Alan Saint-Maximin can create in the game. To be fair, I don't think there's many people in the Premier League can do what Alan Saint-Maximin can do on his day, as we saw against Man City the other week. That was probably his best ever game in a black and white shirt. Sorry. But Ryan Fraser, you'll always know you'll get 100%, and he's got good quality with it compared to other players who play in that position for Newcastle. So for me, because we're at home, and if we, with the 12th man that St James's Park crowd can be, I'd be more concerned of having a fuller strength team against West Ham than Palace.
Just a quick one, just before we move on, because I've got a couple of more questions for T. Do you think we need Bruno to be playing on Saturday? Do you think he will give the Newcastle players and the fans the lift? And do we need that lift going into the game against Palace? That was for you, Richie.
Was it? I thought it was for T. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was
thinking the same thing. Is that for me?
Yeah, I thought it was for T as well.
No, it was for you, Richie. I said I was going to ask him T some other questions.
Well, say that again. I was looking at the comments coming through. Go on, say it again, mate. Sorry.
No. What I'm saying is that do you think that we need Bruno to play on Saturday in order to give the players and the fans a lift? And, from that perspective,
not necessarily, because I think the crowd will already be lifted with the fact that Isak's on his home debut. So I don't think you'd need the crowd boost on that front. I think it would make the crowd be a little bit more relaxed, potentially, if Bruno's there. But if you look at how hard that Joe Linton, Willock and Longstaff played on Wednesday, the only thing I would think about that fact is if you're starting with those three is, has the last two games took it out of them? Because Wednesday night, you were talking 98 minutes of hard graft, hard press. That's a lot. And it depends on whether there's going to have that turnaround, because obviously Eddie Howe's already mentioned we've had, since we played Man City, then we went away to Tranmere. We've had the 3 away games, obviously the Cup game, then we had Wolves, and then we've obviously had Liverpool. Liverpool had a day's extra rest, so we knew it was going to be a hard game on that sort of front. So I'd like to see Bruno back because obviously it just helps keep that freshness in the midfield as such, if that makes sense. I think if all three of them were there, you'll know yourself, Pete, that it's all about game management sometimes. Sometimes, like with Bruno can play in various different positions in that centre midfield. We've discussed this on numerous times. If, say, for example, we were on the attack mode and you just want to have a little, I suppose what you can call it, a couple of minute breathers during the game, you can rotate that midfield around just to allow for that. So, say, for example, if I expect the way that Newcastle have been playing with stats and stuff this year, we'll probably have a lot more possession than we used to have in previous seasons against Palace. Where we'd probably try to hit them on the break. You'll probably see Newcastle dominate the game a lot more tomorrow. So that means that we can, obviously, if they're chasing the ball, it might work in our favour that we always know the team that's chasing the ball more has to do a lot more a lot more running, tiring out. So that game management on that level might be able to help those three midfielders, because we know that the graft that they've put in over the last few weeks has been second to none, really.
Definitely. And you know what? I just want to touch on this because I think it's a really good point. Would I is put a good point in there. He's put Willock look absolutely dead on his feet on Wednesday. 110% given. And actually, Willock has played in every game, recently. And it feeds into what you've just been saying. And actually, I had a conversation with someone this evening. And actually, they were saying that they thought that Willock wouldn't start on Saturday if Bruno was fit, to give him a rest. They thought that Longstaff would start on the back of that. And I was like, no, Willock needs to play. But actually, the points that you've raised, and Wood I making that point, about Willock, and he looked absolutely shattered. He covered every blade of grass on Wednesday, but he's been doing that Wednesday. Did it again at Molineux on Sunday. Previously, he did it again because he started against Tranmere. He's played so many minutes, and it's going to be a tough one. I mean, talking about that Bruno situation, Woodeye has also said wouldn't take any risk with players' fitness. There's a lot of games till the next window. Which is absolutely, I respect that opinion. Seng's gone. No, we need Bruno in all games. He needs to play every game, and you're not wrong there as well.
Do you know what? I agree. Ideally, you would, but I think when it's touch and go with injuries and recoveries, it's just that's when you've just got to be that little bit careful.
Definitely. T's just said he's like, get him out there. Pass him up, get him out there. Just let him do his look. We love that. We would love that, but obviously, it is it's a different season for us as well as Palace, in that we're in a season where we're going to be playing a lot of Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday matches because of the fact that the World Cup impacts the season. So it is going to have a massive impact on players more than any season before. But
I think what your point is with the injuries as well, Peter, before you move on to the next question, is you've got to look at since pre-season how many Newcastle players are already struggling with hamstring injuries. Luckily, not, apart from the Shelvey one, drastic one, it seems to be slight strains rather than actual pulls. So, and we know that Eddie Howe said that his teams are going out on the pitch and they're delivering everything he's asking for. They're going out and the press is there, the energy level's there, and they are pushing the players to their limits. And we know we're one of the fittest teams in the Premier League, but we've also got to be just a little bit careful, because obviously this is like, if you look, there's obviously Shelvey, Wilson, Sam Maxwell, and Bruno now in the space of the first 4 games of the season have all had hamstring issues. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you can even mention Trippier. He held his a little bit at the Wolves game as well. When he took that corner, that was probably more of like an action for actually the kick itself rather than pulling it in a run. But it just highlights how careful we need to be with these players this season.
No, I would agree with you 100%. I just want to switch back to Palace just before we move on to a different section. And I don't think we've talked about this enough. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm quite passionate on this. I don't rate Frank Lampard as a manager. I don't rate him as a manager at Everton. I don't think he's a good manager, and I
second that.
I'm glad you agree with that. He hasn't proved himself as a top level manager yet. I don't even think he's Premier League level, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, though. Steven Gerrard, yes, he won the Scottish division, but I'm not being funny. Me, T, and Richie, we could win the Scottish division. If we were manager of Rangers. I might be being a little bit disrespectful to Scottish football, but I don't care. I think if we were managers of Rangers, man. So that doesn't impress me. And he's got a worse win record than Gary Neville, who was absolutely shocking at Valencia when he was manager. So they seem to be bigged up quite a lot. But your manager, T, in Patrick Vieira, another former player, do you think he gets the accolades that he deserves with the job that he's done at Palace? Because I'll be honest, I don't think he does. And I want you to have an opinion on that, and I just want you to assess what he's done at your club.
I think honestly, I think Patrick gets a lot of love from our fan base, from the people in and around the club. He gets a lot of love, and I think it's rightfully so. I mean, he's come in and done some amazing things. I mean, nobody expected us to do what we did last season with the amount of change that we had within our squad. You know, I mean, I read so many articles putting us, you know, in the relegation battle to start the season last year, and to go through an entire season and never even be in the conversation for that. But then at times to even be pushing top 10, like we were at times during the season. He's done some amazing things. I don't know. I think some of the times why people don't give him his flowers, so to speak, the way that he, like you said, he may deserve, is just the fact that, you know, people say, "Oh, he's unproven too." You know, what has he done? But at the same time, he's done some significant things, because he took Nice to the Champions League. Like, let's not overshadow some of the things that he's done in his career. But I think he's been great so far. Man, I have him as our manager. I back him 110%. So I don't know. I think it's one of those things that, you know, I think the more we progress and as a club, man, I think people will start seeing him for what he is. And I wouldn't be surprised if sooner or later you start hearing about the fact that, you know, bigger clubs, whether it be here in England or other places, might have interest in him, to be honest.
It's funny he mentions this. Are you going to say about Adam's comment here?
You go for it, mate. You go for it.
Adam actually points here. He actually thinks that Vieira could potentially replace Pep at Man City when he leaves.
Yep.
You know
I heard that at the end of last season.
Do you know what I think? I think the interesting thing is, if you look at that, obviously, Gerrard at Villa and obviously Lampard at Everton, you know, they're classed as, I think, if you in old school eyes, they're classed as part of the original Premier League teams. You know, the traditional clubs and stuff like that. And Palace are probably coming into that sort of thing at that stage now. You know, like a seasoned Premier League team. But you're right. No one gets talked about as much. Vieira doesn't get talked about as much, in my opinion, that he should, because he's, you know, we talked about the realistic of the last few years. Palace have really only had Zaha is that focal point. You know, I was going to mention before, this is something that you might be able to bring up here, or you might have discussed already, that I wanted to know how they've coped so far in the centre of the park, not having Gallagher this season, because obviously he was integral to part of what Palace was last year. So obviously you look at that, and then you look at all the money that Villa and Everton have spent, and they, you know, Lampard and Gerrard can't get a tune out of any of the players. As Pete mentioned, the win records of both managers are absolutely abysmal. You know, if it wasn't for their name themselves, as in Lampard and Gerrard, would these boards have actually backed them as much as they have? You know, if it was a Steve Bruce who had that sort of record, would he be out his ear? Or do you know what I mean? I think this is, you know, just because you were a good player doesn't necessarily mean you're a good manager.
You're a good manager.
If you're an excellent player, you've got to be an outstanding coach, because you've got so much pressure because of your playing days. If you want to go down that front, you know, as Pete mentioned, Gary Neville didn't do it at this moment in time. Gerrard's done it at Rangers. Lampard did it a little bit at Derby that one season, but apart from that, they haven't been a success as a manager. Whereas, as you said yourself, T, Vieira took an unfancied Nice team to the Champions League. Obviously, he didn't get on very well with our friend Alan Saint-Maximin, but you know that he built a team around that, got them to the Champions League, and he's doing a really good job with Crystal Palace. And no disrespect, T, I could see other teams possibly looking at him as a replacement, like a big, you know, say for example, if Arsenal hadn't started the season the way they've done, you know, they had an up and down season, just missed out on the Champions League. You know, we put the final nail in the coffin for that last year when they came to Newcastle last year. They could be looking at people like Patrick Vieira to think, do you know what, look at what he's done it down the road at Palace. He would be perfect. The fans would love him. You know, the same at Man City. You know, he played there briefly at the end of his career, not to the same level as he was at Arsenal, but I think he's got a much more promising managerial career in front of him the next 10, 15 years or so than what the other two have.
Yeah, I agree. It's like one of those things, man. Like nobody wants, like it's like your girlfriend or your wife, man. Nobody wants the lady that nobody wants. You know what I mean? So I think it said a lot. Like it's a compliment to have a manager that other clubs would consider in those roles. That means he's doing something good. That means that your club is doing good. You know what I mean? So it's one of the realistic things. It's just I hope that, you know, with what the progress that I made and that we'll continue to make, I just hope that he'll want to stick around a little bit longer.
I think the other interesting comparison, just before we move on, Pete, is that you look at when Newcastle were going through the recruitment stage of hiring the new manager last year after the takeover, and there was a lot of people going, "Oh, you've got to look at like Gerrard and stuff. Why haven't we looked at them and stuff like that?" There's a lot of Newcastle fans now. You know, even when you look at even some of the pundits were going, "Why did they not look at Gerrard? Why did they not look at Lampard? Eddie Howe's not this fancy man. All he's done is he's got Bournemouth relegated." You know, they didn't sit there and do a program like we did, Pete, about Eddie Howe, how well he'd coming from League Two, everything that was adverse in his managerial career at League Two, and how he got all the way to the Premier League and stuff like that. And the one thing that everybody remembered was his relegation with Bournemouth. Yeah. And everyone's now potentially tipping him. Yep. Everyone's now potentially tipping him. And obviously, touch wood, it doesn't happen. Potentially talking him as the next England manager along with Graham Potter, because of how well that both of them are. I'm not trying to say touch wood, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, Pete.
No. We don't want him leaving us yet. No way.
I don't think he would.
No, I don't. Being honest, and a lot of people outside of Newcastle United and our fan base would say, "Oh, that's mad. Why wouldn't he take the England job?" I don't think he would, because I believe he wants to see this job through. This job could potentially make his career if he can take us to the upper echelons of the Premier League, and better yet, win a trophy for Newcastle United. For me, that would eclipse anything that he could possibly achieve.
Not just that, though, Pete. You've also got to remember he's still in the early stage of his management. He's only 44 years old. He's not going to be. He wants to be on that training pitch every day. He doesn't want to be doing it once every 4 weeks or however long when the national break is on. He's a bit like, you look at Mourinho. Mourinho's about late 50s now, I think, and even he still classes himself as too young to be the Portuguese national coach, because he likes the day-to-day stuff for things. So, I think it'll be a long, long time, but it's nice to have people talking, and all of a sudden Eddie Howe's getting that respect as a coach that he wasn't when we were doing all the hiring and firing and stuff like that.
Oh, definitely. But going back to the point, Eddie Howe is that manager that obviously we're proud of, but it's very, very clear that from what he's saying that you're very, very proud of Patrick Vieira being your manager at Crystal Palace, and rightly so. I don't think we even mentioned this, but Patrick Vieira was one of the top of the list that we went for. I don't know if you mentioned that already, Rich.
No, I didn't know.
Under the previous ownership, we went for Patrick Vieira, and then we ended up with Steve Bruce. So that went from the top rung in terms of Patrick Vieira. I did not know that. Huh? Yeah, but to be fair, both Patrick Vieira and Mikel Arteta turned us down when we made approaches for him. Well, once Rafa Benitez left the club, they were the two at the top of the list that we wanted to take over the club, and rightly, both of them rejected the club at that point in time, because I don't think there's any manager in their right mind would want to work under Mike Ashley. So I think for their own careers, they made the best decision. But it would have been great to have those managers to be able to do what they've done at Palace and Arsenal, respectively, to have those managers doing it at Newcastle. But look, I wouldn't change it for the world. We've got our new owners, and we've got Eddie Howe. And Richie, you made a really good point. If anyone's not watched the Howe handover that we did as a show with one of the Bournemouth podcasts way back when, I think it was November last year.
Yeah, November last year, yeah.
Go back and watch that, because the way in which they talked about Eddie Howe really gave us that encouragement that he could do something great at Newcastle United. And boy, has he done that, and he's still in that process of doing that right now.
I didn't know whether you wanted to touch on that Conor Gallagher stuff while we were talking about, but I brought it up before, so I don't know whether you discussed it or not. But I just wanted to know how have both seasons compared with obviously having Conor Gallagher be an integral cog in that machine last year for Palace and not having them this year, and obviously with not having them there this season. How's Patrick Vieira tactically changed Palace as a setup this season?
So in all honesty, the setup is very similar. Except now seeing more of Eberechi Eze integrated into things. I mean, he started every match this season. Comparatively, I think he only played in 16 matches total last season, and only a handful of those were starts. But I think the biggest difference is there's a lot more onus put on to Eze when it comes to playmaking, ball carrying, things like that. Jeff Schlupp is the one that tries to portray more of the Conor Gallagher role that we had last year. And it's interesting because I saw an article that was out on Athletic, and they were talking about examining players across the big European leagues and basically giving a comparison between them and who basically emulates Conor Gallagher's play and role the most. And they did it based on finish. So come to find out, the person emulates his style of play the most is just Schlupp, 97% likeness. It's kind of crazy. Schlupp isn't as good with pressuring and ball recovery as Gallagher was, but he's better with carrying. And he's not, of course, not as good with goal scoring. But it was just interesting to see that because, we need to go get another midfielder to do the Conor Gallagher role. But it was just interesting to see that the one that emulates it the best is the dude that we already have, statistically, at least, statistically speaking. But I think, it's similar, but it's different for us at this point in the midfield. And it's not the same intense high press that we saw with Conor Gallagher, but it's similar. I think we do a better job holding on to the ball now with having Eze in there game in and game out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Right. Look, and I don't know how long we've got with you, T. I don't know if you're okay for another 15 minutes or so.
I got another five, maybe.
Another 5 minutes. That's absolutely fine because what I want to do is before you go, I want to make sure we get some stats in. And there's only one way we get some stats in.
Cool.
And it's with our stat man.
Yo, the graphics are too much, man. The graphics are next level. I love it, dude. I love it.
That's Pete and Richie. That's 3 great reactions for 3 shows running for Daz, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Daz needs to cut these bad boys. Honestly, T, what we do is that we wait for every guest to come on and see their reaction to that vid every week, and you've been the third guy that's reacted to that. I love it.
And the best part about it is you play the montage, and then Keith is there. And it's like, oh shit.
We've missed the trick. We need entrances for everybody on Loaded.
I love it. But look, as always, like magic, Keith appears. Statman Keith, it's a pleasure to have you on, as always, as part of the team. Look, I know you got some stats for us, and I want to get some stats in before we get our predictions before T leaves us. So, what have you got for us today with some stats for the game against Palace?
Yeah, I've got quite a few tonight for Crystal Palace, and I've got some head-to-head stats. Then I've got a few stats on the managers, some stats on the individual players, and then a little bit general stats. So just going on the general head-to-head between Newcastle and Crystal Palace, all-time record. Newcastle have got the advantage there with 29 wins, 10 draws against 12 losses in 51 games. Head-to-head in the Premier League as well, slight advantage to Newcastle, 11 wins compared to 5 for Crystal Palace and 6 draws. Again, very minor advantage here though. Slightly more goals for Newcastle against Crystal Palace, 27 compared to 20. And the defensive record as well, 11 clean sheets for Newcastle compared to 4 clean sheets for Crystal Palace in this Premier League fixture. The managers, now this one surprised me a bit, Eddie Howe. It's a bit indifferent, the record against Crystal Palace, games he's managed against Crystal Palace. 14 games with 4 wins, 4 draws and 6 defeats. Now this one about Patrick Vieira. Crystal Palace have only won 4 of 21 Premier League away games under Patrick Vieira. 4 wins, 8 draws and 9 defeats. They've been more solid at Selhurst Park. I think they had 8 wins and 7 draws last year with 4 defeats, but away from home, the 21 away games, only 4 wins there for Crystal Palace. Now, Wilfried Zaha, I wanted to speak about this man here because Wilfried Zaha has 13 goals in 20 Premier League games in 2022. Now, that's the best return for him in a Premier League in the calendar year. And only Harry Kane with 17 goals and Son Heung-min with 15 goals have scored more this calendar year than Wilfried Zaha. Now, Alexander Isak, getting back to Newcastle. Now, if he scores tomorrow, that he'll become only the second player to score in the Premier League for Newcastle for his first 2 games. Question to you guys, who was the last guy who did it in his first 2 games for Newcastle? Who scored in his first 2 games for Newcastle?
Remy?
Rich?
Do you know what I was trying to think?
First 2 games for Newcastle. No, I don't think it is Loic Remy.
Any ideas at all? Want to take a punt? Just take a punt.
First, Demabar?
No, was it not Papa Cisse?
Yeah,
Very good guesses for you both. You want to have a little guess, T?
Tell you what, I'd be shocked if he gets it over us. Like,
I know. We need to pack up and go home if that's the case.
Okay. Here we go. Shot in the dark. Andy Carroll.
Good guesses, guys. But I'm afraid it was Sir Les Ferdinand back in 95, 96. Remember that run he had at the start of the season?
yeah.
Ferdinand. Oh,
He scored against Cov, didn't he?
Shout out to Les Ferdinand.
He scored against Coventry. Was that Coventry's first game?
He had an amazing run. Sheffield Wednesday, that amazing run that year for his first games. The defenders for Newcastle, the best defenders, getting back to the stats there, Fabian Shaw and Dan Burn are the best defenders for Newcastle. Shaw's got an average of 3.8 clearances per game, winning about 61 aerial duels. And Dan Burn, he's got an aerial winning duel rate of 78%, whereas Joel Ward is the leading one for Crystal Palace. He's got 82% success rate in aerial duels. A couple of general stats to finish off. Newcastle have only lost, and Richie touched on this earlier, only lost 1 of 12 Premier League games at St James's Park in a run that goes back to December against Man City, with that 1 defeat coming against Liverpool. So getting really strong again at St James's Park like the good old days. If Newcastle lose, don't lose against Crystal Palace, it'll be the first time in 10 years that they've been unbeaten in the first 3 Premier League games in the season at home. However, if Eddie Howe doesn't win tomorrow's game, so if it's a draw or worse, it'll equal his longest winless streak of 5 games so far under Eddie Howe. Now he has a little downer. I'm sorry to do this, but a little downer here on Crystal Palace.
No, he's not.
Crystal Palace have dropped 10 points from leading winning positions in 7 Premier League games in the last 7 Premier League games. Pete, Rich, we know what this is like last season in the first half for Newcastle dropping points, so we can empathise there. Palace have also dropped 7 points after going in front this season, and they failed to win any of the 3 games that they've scored first. A final stat about Newcastle. In this fixture, since going back to 2014, Newcastle have scored more than 1 goal in only 1 of the 13 Premier League games against Crystal Palace. So not many goals in this fixture going back to 2014. And that rounds off the stats.
That might change. That might change my prediction then.
I love it. But no, look, as always, Keith, Double O Stato, absolutely spot on with your stats. On point, as always. Yeah. There's no better stat man out there, that is for sure. But look, I know time is tight. Look, T, we'd have loved to add another 15 minutes with you, but you've been with us for an hour and 5 minutes. I really, really appreciate it. To take your time.
It's been my pleasure.
Look, just before you go, because we're gonna continue and we're gonna talk a little bit of tactics with regards to the game and how it's going to unfold from our perspective. But just before you go, what is your prediction come 5 o'clock English time on Saturday when the game ends? What do you think the score is going to be?
Well, as Crystal Palace fans, we know that it is tough. Go okay, so I'm gonna get a win. St. James Park is a place to play. It's a long trip, and as Keith railed off, you know, the stats have shown that it's tough to come by those wins up there. I do think that we'll be able to pull a point. I think based on his stats and the lack thereof of goals, I'm gonna go with 1-1.
Interesting.
Hey, interesting. Very, very interesting. But I'm not going to get.
But then he said that when he came with the goal stat, I was like, oh, okay, well let me alter that a little bit.
I think the one thing to touch on with that, T, though, is Newcastle haven't been this good a squad probably in the last 15 years, Keith. So and we've never had any goals in the team in that 15 years. So we've got goals in the team now.
Finally.
And I think we had, you know what? I think we had this. Honestly, we had the same issue. You know, we only had one. A lot of times we only had one guy that's gonna get us a goal. You know, so.
I respect that. But look, regardless of that, I think it's going to be a real interesting game. I think it's going to be a tactical game. I think both Patrick Vieira and Eddie Howe are very, very tactical managers, very good managers. I think it's going to be a good battle. And you know what? I've got to be honest. I've got a lot of respect for Crystal Palace. I like Crystal Palace as a club. I like your fan base. I like your atmosphere that you create in your stadium. You're certainly a lot better than Liverpool. Let's put it that way. Forget Liverpool. I don't care about them at the moment. But Palace, no respect for Liverpool. Massive respect for Crystal Palace. That's all I got to say.
Word.
But T, I'm going to let you go because you've been amazing for us. Look, we're going to have you back, no doubt. In the return fixture when we come to Selhurst Park later on in the season, we'll get you back on and we'll get you talking all things Crystal Palace again. But for now, we'll let you go. Massive thanks to you for coming on. You take care, my man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Looking forward to talk with you guys later on. Right.
Cheers, T. All the best apart from tomorrow afternoon.
Take care. Brilliant to have T on. Massive thanks for him to coming on. Look, he's come over all the way over from the States. The time difference is slightly different. He's been brilliant with some of his opinions. And you know what I love about our away day guests is that they're all really respectful about Newcastle United. They know their football. They're not coming on and just spouting a load of rubbish to wind the other fan base up. They know their stuff. They're respectful, and we have a really good conversation with them. And I love that about away days. It is brilliant. So great to have T on from back of the nest, and I'm sure we'll have him back. But what I wanted to do now, guys, is obviously we'd have loved T to have his opinion from a Palace perspective. But what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit of tactics, really, about the game. And I did ask T for his predicted lineup before the game started. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. That's there. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, can. Yeah.
So T gave his predicted lineup with regards to Crystal Palace. So they're looking at a 4-3-3, very similar to Newcastle United. And he's got his team set out there, how he thinks it's going to be set up on Saturday. And it's very interesting. Now, I've gone for this Newcastle United team. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether you guys think it's going to be slightly different or not. Now, I'm sure that this man will be a topic of conversation because we've already talked about him tonight. I've gone with Willock. I've gone, you know what? Let's get Willock in the team. You know, he's done 3 games on the bounce. I'm sure he can do 4 and work his socks off for the team. He'll have a week's rest after this. But I've gone with Bruno Guimaraes back in midfield. I think that he might be fit and ready to start on Saturday, which I think, and Richie, I talked to you about it earlier. I think it'll be a welcome boost to the team having him back in the team. But you know, from a Newcastle perspective, Keith, I'll come to you first. Is there anything that maybe you think might be slightly different, or are you kind of in agreement with the team that I've kind of put together there for Newcastle on Saturday?
Well, I certainly feel more confident with Botman at the back, definitely, because I'm wondering if maybe Lascelles would be in there, you know, because Lascelles put a few performances in recently, and Howe seems to be very loyal to his players. In particular, it seems to, when someone gets in the team, he doesn't seem to move them out quickly. But I think bringing Botman back, I'd feel more confident. And it's, again, linking in with what Richie was saying about the rotation, but you know, we want to be careful that we don't get too thin on the ground. You know, Richie alluded earlier about the hamstring issues with a few players out with hamstrings and a few warnings there, and it would be good to mix it up a bit. I would love Bruno to be back, but I'm thinking maybe off the bench, you know,
Okay.
at some point in the second half, as opposed, because again, I've got this. I know he's been in the chamber and things, and I would hate him to be rushed back into the seam in the full pelt of a game at St. James's Park, and for something to go wrong, you know. So bring him off the bench, maybe Longstaff, for like a half, or you know, for 60 minutes, and then bring Bruno on if need be.
Okay, interesting. Richie, would you agree with that? Is there anything you would change about the way in which Newcastle have set, the way in which I've set the Newcastle team up, or do you think that's looking like how it will start? I mean, I put Bruno in there initially, but do you think Longstaff could be the one that starts the game?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think what it does highlight is though that, you know, it's not too bad. You know, I think as I mentioned earlier, we were all dreading it when we saw the midfield the other day, when we know that Bruno was out, Sam Maxwell was out. You know, we thought we were fearing the worst of Liverpool, but against Wolves and against Liverpool have shown that they're not a soft midfield like they used to be. You know, they're solid now. They're all, you know, singing on the same hymn sheet as as one of the sayings and stuff like that. Everyone's working for each other. And I think the good thing is, when you've got leaders on the pitch like Trippier, who constantly talks to players as well, and you've got to remember, you know, Longstaff and Willock are still young lads. Do you know what I mean? And if he can like show that leadership and coach them through the game from a playing standpoint, it's great. I think one thing I think we'll set up as in the formation he's been, he's favoured 4-3-3. I think that the front three could probably be the same as what you've got there. I don't think Maxi probably would be ready. So I'd be more shocked if he was starting, put it that way. He might be involved off the bench potentially. But obviously that depends on how bad his hamstring strain was the other day against Wolves. But Bruno, I think he might be involved at some point. It would all depend on. I think the player I'd be more concerned about would be Joe Willock, as we mentioned before. He's pretty much played. He was the only one that started against Tranmere. Obviously, then he played against Wolves as well, and then he played against Liverpool as well. So 3 away trips, 3 games where he's pretty much played every minute of those three away games as well. I think the one driving force he's going to be wanting to do to stay in that play, to play, even though he might be not physically in his best because of potential fatigue over those 3 last games, is we touched on it last night. There seems to be this partnership developing with Alexander Isak on and off the pitch that we mentioned last night, that it could be something where it helps, him be a starting name over your Longstaffs, your Shelbys, going forward, not just now when we're still on the ground. So if you leave, if you left him out, you'd understand. But at the same time, he might be wanting to keep that connection going and say to Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall, look, I need to be one of the first names on the team sheet as well. So I think it would all depend on how his legs are feeling. As at the end of the day, as we said, he might not get a hamstring strain, but he could get some sort of other strain because of how much run he's over the last 3 games. So it's an interesting one, that one. The one thing I am pleased that you've put back in that is, and it slightly differs what Keith mentioned about. I know we know Eddie Howe likes to be loyal to his players if they've been playing well. And to be fair, there's not many players haven't been playing well so far at the start of the season. Is bringing the 2 centre halves back in, because at the end of the day, they've done nothing wrong prior to Liverpool either. So it's you would say that Shaw and Botman realistically are probably your 2 starting centre halves naturally. People can argue the fact that Dan Burns done nothing wrong, as we've said. He hasn't done anything wrong. You know what I mean? But when you've got your highest paid centre half, who is potentially a future Dutch captain, and a potential captain of Newcastle going forward potentially as well, and he's going to be, as it's been mentioned a few times today, is probably going to be one of the first names on your team sheet going forward, is that spine in your team. When you look at Pope, Botman, Bruno and Isak as your spine of your team. So it's hard to then leave that sort of player on the bench, even when someone like Dan Burns done really well. But the one thing Eddie Howe does really well is he's not afraid to drop someone. He doesn't just think, do you know what, I'm going to change the system because I've got better players to fit into a system. So he could. There's been talk about going back to a back 3 in Shaw, Botman, and Byrne. Because I know it's never going to happen. I know that, and you know that people. There has been people who've mentioned it because they've done nothing wrong. But at the same time, you do that and you start thinking, well, to be fair, lads, what's happened with Trippier and Target haven't done anything wrong either as well. Just because when you've got a good squad, someone's going to have to leave out. It's as a coach, it's a headache that you like to have. And it's only going to get harder when Newcastle go forward and are starting to recruit even better players than they've been able to put in now. Because then you're going to be turning around and saying, well, why is he leaving Botman out? Or why is he resting him? Or why is he resting Bruno? Or why is he resting Isak? You're going to get this in the years to come. So, but I think the one reason why I like Botman and Shaw back in there is because with Zaha being that threat on the left-hand side for Palace, I think the double teaming that he's going to get between obviously the work rate and tracking back from Almiron. Trippier obviously he likes to get forward as well. But Shaw's really good on that cover as a right centre-back. He can play right back. He's played right back before. As we've just talked on the back 3, he's played right centre. So he's good in that cover if, say, Trippier's caught out of position and Almiron's not being able to keep up with pace for or whatever reason. So in that's where I'm more comfortable with Shaw being in that right centre-back role over Lascelles. Lascelles tends to be more your typical orthodox centre back. You know, you could see a few times when in the first half against Liverpool, there's a few times when you look at where Shaw would get the ball and he would try and pass it to Willock or Longstaff or Joe Linton in front of them and break the line. And there was a couple of times when Lascelles had that opportunity, but he wasn't comfortable playing that ball, and he would go back to either Pope or play it across to Dan Burn. So I think that just helps the natural setup of how Eddie Howe wants to play, having Shaw and Botman there, especially Shaw, as I mentioned, over Lascelles there.
You mentioned it earlier on in the season. What I say earlier on in the season, earlier on in pre-season, that you touched on the fact that there was a kind of a Botman and Shaw centre-back pairing at times, but there was also a Burn and Lascelles centre-back pairing at times, and it looks like that's what they're looking at, in that Botman and Shaw is the centre-back pairing, and it's very clear that Burn and Lascelles are the backup. Now, obviously, like you said, they proved their worth against Liverpool. They were brilliant, but although they were brilliant, Botman and Shaw are still better as a partnership, in my opinion, and clearly in yours. So that's why they have to start, and they need a rest, because, like we've talked about, they are going to play Wednesday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Sunday, whatever it is. They are going to need a rest as well over the course of the season to be able to make sure that they're fit.
Well, that's it. I think you know, you touch on a rest. I think Dan Burns due a rest, because obviously when Botman came back in, you know, at the start of the season, when Burn started at centre back, everyone thought that Burn would drop out, but then Target got his slight knock, so he played at left back. So he hasn't had that natural breather yet, as you'd say. So Botman, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Burns actually rested tomorrow, so to speak. It's just as a natural rest, you know, not because he hasn't been playing well. At the end of the day, Botman's, you know, took it on the chin and said, "Look, I know I'm not. I want to play every game, but I know I'm not going to." It would be nice to see that. I know Dan Burn the club means so much to him, and the fans absolutely adore him because he gives 110% every single time he puts the black and white stripes on. But he also needs to be realistic and say, obviously, you know, he's in his 30s now, so obviously he's going to want to be played as much as he can. But also the time is having these few game breathers as well will also help potentially prolong his career as well, because you're putting less miles in the tank, sort of thing as well, against really good Premier League opposition.
Definitely, I think that's a fair point. And look, I'm just putting this kind of formation in place, really, because I think this is where it's going to be really, really interesting in how this team kind of develops, or how the structure of the team develops over the course of the game on Saturday. Now, what's really interesting about this is that, you know, Palace play a similar system. They play a similar system in terms of that 4-3-3. So they've got their three midfielders here in Eze, Doucouré, and Schlupp, who T was talking about earlier on. And obviously we've got the likes of Joe Linton, Willock, and Longstaff in this position here. Is there anything, Keith, from the way in which Palace are set up that worries you? Are there any particular players that stand out for you that may potentially cause us a little bit, a few problems?
For me, it's always Zaha. Really, I know he's been in brilliant form this year, and I just over the years at St James's Park, like I think I remember, was it 2018-19 season where Palace won 1-0, and I think Palace got the late penalty, and it was from mistake that Zaha was managed to draw from the Newcastle back line. It's going to be a challenge tomorrow. Really keep controlling, containing, double teaming Zaha. Really, maybe Atse as well. I think certainly coming in as well in support of Zaha. I'm interested to see how Schlupp performs. You know, in the sort of Conor Gallagher role from last year, and how Newcastle are able to manage that situation as well.
Definitely. It was interesting that T talked about Schlupp as that Gallagher replacement. Not maybe as successful with the amount of goals that he scores, but equally, I think it's really, really important that some of his sprints and his work rate is pretty good. Not great on the presses, but they see him as a Gallagher replacement. I don't see them as very similar players at all. But Schlupp he kind of has the knack to turn up in certain games, not necessarily against certain teams, but just or almost has like a bit of a surprise appearance and turns up in certain games, has a really good game. Hopefully that doesn't be the case tomorrow, and that he has a good game, because he's got Joe Linton around him, and I think Joe Linton will stop him playing the way in which he probably wants to play. But Eze is going to be an issue here, and this is where Willock's going to need to be very, very careful, because he plays on that same side of the midfield as Zaha makes those runs here. And Michael Palmer made the point in that actually in some games it's not necessarily the case that he plays on the left. Sometimes he plays as a central striker. Edouard may come off the left here, and actually there's a lot of like ins and outs, and maybe there'll be times that these two play as a front two, with Olise just dropping in there as a four, Eze coming on the left, which he can do. So there is an opportunity for that to be a way in which they play too. But I do believe that Zaha will look to play in these areas. They will look to try and exploit those areas. So Trippier is going to have to be on his game to stop that. Again, Almiron, which I've got no doubt will play that role in terms of trying to neutralise Eze here, but also trying to commit Mitchell. And this, for me, is where it's going to be a really, really good battle here, is that Mitchell is a very, very good defender as a left back. He's one of them. He's a better version of Dummett, in terms of he's not one of them that's going to get forward and try and whip balls into the box. He's not one of them attacking left backs. But what you'll find from him is defensively, he's always very, very solid. And I think Almiron, with his pace, will commit him. And just like the game at St. James's Park last season, Almiron committed Mitchell and actually got past him to win the ball in order to score the goal. So that will be an interesting battle there. I don't know how Nathaniel Klein has been playing for Palace, but again, I think Fraser or Alan St-Maximin, whoever it would be that plays on that left, would or can get the better of Klein. I don't see him as the player that he was beforehand. He's certainly not the player that he used to be after a number of injuries that he's had. But what's going to be interesting here is that these two, Anderson and Gay, are a very, very good defensive unit. They play in tandem. They play really well together. And it'll be interesting to see how Isak gets on with these two. Now, the one thing that Anderson doesn't have is pace. So if I was Isak, I'd be playing off him. Because although he's physical in Anderson, he hasn't got the pace to get in and behind. So I'd be looking at getting into these areas potentially, or getting to that area where he can cut onto his right and try and bend it into that top corner with the ball, certainly from this kind of space into there. But Gay is a good defender. Okay, so it'll be really interesting to see what Isak does and how he kind of uses these defenders to get the benefit of getting in and behind on things. So it's an interesting situation here. Does any of you guys, before we move on, have an opinion on Palace? And can you see where they maybe are at fault and where we can maybe exploit them?
I've definitely got to agree with what you say about Nathaniel Klein. I think that's the area that you need to target. He's not at the stage he was in the career, 4 or 5 years ago. He's coming at the twilight of his career now, and he hasn't really been great and set the world right on that front. So I think that's definitely there. And to be fair, it's the sort of, you see him on the pitch. This is where you're shouting to have Maxi on it, because Maxi would he'd just tear him another one. The way he's been playing recently. Regards, you talk about the battle that Almiron and Mitchell had in the same fixture last year. It was that one bit of quality that from Almiron, and obviously the Bruno set him away down with that ball down the right hand side. He was able to get the other side of him, and because he was able to, it's a fantastic finish from where he is on his left foot from the far right corner of the box. Realistically, it was a hell of a finish. And 9 times out of 10, that's probably not going to be the end result. It just on that occasion it was. But I think the interesting point is what you've mentioned as well, is about where Isak should be targeting on Anderson. Anderson, the one I think that you've got to go back 3 games when they played Liverpool. Obviously, Anderson, as you mentioned, not being physical, but he's also a little bit naughty as well. You know, those old school naughtiness little things. And we've got to. I don't think Isak's the same sort of person temperament-wise that Núñez is. You know, Núñez hasn't really got that experience of playing in a top 5 league in Europe. Do you know what I mean? And it was still new to him. You know, we're talking like his 2nd game in, really. And it was his first start for Liverpool. And Anderson just got under his skin completely, and he didn't like it. With Isak, I don't think Isak's that sort of player, but also Eddie Howe, you know, the people like Trippier as well will be saying to him, look, don't let him get under the skin. You've got the pace to get past him, so he doesn't have to be close to you. You can drag him out, get him into the channels. So that's the difference between Isak and Núñez. He's a different sort of player. So I like Anderson as a player, if I'm honest. I think I liked him when he was at Fulham. I think he was that one standout player from the team that went down, and I was surprised he went to Palace, because I thought there would be teams, especially them being a Danish international, I thought, you know, there'd be other people in from bigger clubs than Palace, so I was surprised he went to Palace, but I think it was a good, astute signing for them. And as you said, Anderson and Vieira are a good centre-back partnership for this level, for where they are in the Premier League table. You probably look at, there's not many other teams, as I said, in that other 14 who've, you know, we've got a few decent, defensive centre-back partnerships now, but there's not many that have got a good partnership like they have with Anderson and Gear.
Definitely, and I think, you know, if anyone's going to breach that defence, it'll be him. It'll be Isak, because he's got so much about his game that is going to keep these guys guessing. That is for sure. And I think he's going to really, really commit this defence, because we are a team that are going to want to push forward. So actually, I've had the team set up here almost like that we're trying to stop Crystal Palace, but I think it's going to actually be the other way, and that Joe Linton's going to be here, Willett's going to be here, Longstaff's going to be here, and literally Decore is going to be sitting on Isak in terms of trying to protect the defence here, and we're going to push in, and they're going to be sitting like this in the hope that they catch Newcastle on the counter-attack. So you're going to find that Botman and Shaw are going to be slightly further forward here. Trippier is going to be on the touchline here. Target's going to be here. And this is how I see the game. This is how I've just set this team up here now, is how I see the game on Saturday. And it's going to be a case of, can Newcastle United break Palace down? And Liverpool found it difficult when Palace sit on their 18-yard box, or better yet for them, on their 9 yards out from their goal on the penalty spot. This is how they're likely to set up, and it's going to be a case of, can Newcastle break them down? And you know, if I move Longstaff, and bring Bruno in, I believe we've got the ability to break them down at this point, because we've got someone that's got elite quality on the ball. And that's where I see Eddie Howe taking the risk in bringing him in. Yes, he's not doing all the pressing that Willock and Joe Linton's going to be doing that could affect his hamstring. But if he sits in there and just keeps the ball and just keeps it ticking over, so he keeps the ball here and he keeps it ticking over to Joe Linton or to Fraser or to Willock, Almiron, pumping those balls into Isak. I think Isak. Sorry, I think that's what they're going to want. They're going to want to see that dominating performance. Now, the one thing we're going to have to worry about, and we've talked about it before, is here. Zaha making those runs in here, because it can be really, really dangerous. But it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an interesting one to see how things kind of develop. I do believe that the goals that Newcastle, if we turn up and we're bang on it, we can score goals. We've already proven against Liverpool that we can work harder than any other team in the league. Liverpool are a hard-working team, but we proved that we can work harder than them. And we did that on Wednesday, but we're going to need to do it again. That is for sure. Any last things before I take the taxes board off?
Not for me. What about Keith?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is in general, Palace have really given a few of the big teams a scare this season, haven't they? Away from home on their own patch, Obviously, Liverpool were very fortunate in that game against Palace as well to even get a draw at Anfield, and then obviously just after that at the City of Manchester going 2-0 up.
Yeah.
And they're always one of those teams who seems to really give City problems over the years. So tomorrow will be, when Newcastle play Palace, it's going to be a really tough game, definitely, undoubtedly. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a scare or two in their early doors.
Definitely. What's really interesting in the chat, lots and lots of different opinions going on here. Adam McCarthy said that Olise's got real quality on that left. Michael said, don't sleep on Eze. He's been fantastic this season. I would put in a bid for that Palace can't refuse. Look, I agree with you. I think he's quality. I think he would have been a great signing for us in the summer to bring in on that right-hand side, because Michael Olise is a super, super talented player that I think is going to the top. I think he's going right to the top, not just at club football, but international football as well. So one to keep an eye on there. Almiron had him on toast for speed. What a goal. Yes, it was a great goal, but look, I've got to be honest, he is a fantastic defender, Tariq Mitchell, and there's a reason why he got his England cap on the back of that as well. Chris, obviously one of the loaded boys, has come with a great question. He's put, lads, question: do we have a responsibility to look after Miggy too? The kilometers he puts in every match is mammoth. I know the options are limited, but could we look to rest Miggy at some point in the season?
I agree with him, Pete, because at the end, I think, do you know what? There's a good chance he could have done, but the unfortunate thing is, we lost Maxi for those, the end of the Wolves game and for the other night. So Fraser's stepping into cover for them now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, West Ham come next week, we might rest Miggy and start Fraser on the right, because we know Fraser can play on both flanks. And we've said numerous times on this channel, he's a fantastic backup for both of those players. So for me, yeah, I think you can protect Almiron on that front as well, because you still know a Brian Fraser. You'll get the legs and press from him as well. He tracks back as well. He's just as hard a working player. For me, you probably get a bit more of an end product as a winger from Fraser than you would from Almiron, on the crossing side of things, to the assists and stuff like that. But I don't think anybody can fault how Almiron started this year. You look at the back end of last season, probably from when we played Palace last at the end of April, and then got all the way through to now. Pre-season, he came back, hit the ground running, probably excelled more than anybody thought he would, and he's brought that form from pre-season into the start. So for me, he's the first name that you'd think of for right midfield, but he's also got that thing. He still has to look over his shoulder, because there's still someone there who can do just as good a job, in my opinion.
I mean, as well later on in the season, on the midpoint of the season, or towards the midway point of the season, one of the players we don't have to worry about in the World Cup will be Almiron, because I don't think Paraguay are in the World Cup, are they?
No, they didn't qualify.
In November, they didn't qualify, so we'll be getting a little break then, at least.
That's true. That's true. So what you're saying is, Keith, that we could just rag him around and drill him into the ground so that he gets a 4-week rest up until Boxing Day when we travel to the King Power. Is that what you're saying?
He'll be fresh come Boxing Day, at least.
Yeah. That's for sure. But look, I've got to be honest. I think, Richie, you made a really good point. Ryan Fraser makes some good runs down here. And actually, when he came on against Wolves, he was really, really good. He proved it again against Liverpool here. He gets down into these positions and he puts some really good balls into the box here. But what you find is he tends to put the ball behind into this area. And if Isak's going here or here, what we need is someone like Willock arriving here or Joe Linton here. because the amount of times it frustrates me a lot. The amount of times that the ball comes into the box and we never have a second man or even a third man coming and arriving into the box to follow up. The amount of times that a striker, whether it's Willock or Isak, will make the run into this area to try and get the ball at the near post, but Fraser will tend to put it back here, and we don't have the second man to come in on the end of it. It might be that the defender takes a touch from the ball and the ball comes out to this area, but we've got no one here, or it comes here, or it comes here, and we've got no one here or here, or arriving in the box. It's frustrating. It frustrates the hell out of me, and this is what we need to be doing more. If we've got a guy that's going to putting the ball into the box, we can't just expect that Alexander Isak is the only guy in the box to try and get on the end of it when he's got two centre-backs that are trying to stop him. We need midfielders to come and arrive in the box. Equally, on the back of that, is that when we have the ball in these positions and Miggy Almiron is trying to run and there's been a ball that's clipped in by Trippier into this area here and Almiron gets the ball, I don't mind the fact that he cuts back on his left here. What I want to see is with his left foot, whip it into the box. He's actually got a good cross in him. There's a ball here at Molineux where he was playing on the left-hand side and he whipped the ball into the box and it was a fantastic ball. I'm not sure if it was the one in which Wood headed the ball and it got deflected wide for a corner, just in this area. But what
I know what you say. I know what you're saying, Peter. It's what you want from Almiron is for a ball like Maxi playing for him for the goal against Man City, where if he is going to cut back in, he's then going to play that dangerous little ball just around the 6-yard box for people to attack and put the goalkeeper in no man's land.
Yeah,
but he just doesn't do it enough. That's the problem. He just doesn't have that quality sometimes.
Well, he doesn't play that ball at all. And this is the thing, like a lot of people get on his back because he doesn't play with his right foot and cross it into the box from here, which is fine. You know, if he's not strong in his right foot, that's fine. If he doesn't feel confident in it, if it's going to be a P roller to Gay and he's going to get rid of it, that's absolutely fine too. But if he's going to get the ball in this position and he's going to then cut back onto his left and Mitchell's here, whip it in with that ball there, cut it inside to Isak, Joe Linton on the end of that, Fraser coming in at the back post. There's an option. There's 2 or 3 options that could be there. But the fact that Almiron gets the ball here and what his first thought is to play it back to Trippier, and Trippier then puts the ball in, it becomes repetitive. And when it becomes repetitive, it's easy to defend because you know what's coming. So he needs to up his game. Alan St-Maximin has changed his game up. What you can see is that he goes down his right and he cuts in on his right-hand side into this space here. But what he's been doing this season is going down on his left. He's opened up his game. Miguel Almiron, for as good as he's been brilliant this season. He needs to open up his game. And if he's going to cut back on his left, he needs to whip that ball in. We need to see more of that happening in the game because we need to open it up and give the opposition more to think about. But that's just something from my perspective that I thought would be really, really useful from a Newcastle perspective. But look, we'll leave that there for the tactics board. We could have carried on talking about various other positions on the pitch all day with regards to that. But it's going to be interesting to see how the tactical game comes about. And Richie, I know from a coaching point of view, both you and myself will keep a close eye on that and how that unfolds on the game on Saturday. But look, what I want to get to now is our predictions. So I don't know what you guys think. I'm slightly nervous about how this game is going to unfold on Saturday. But Richie, come 5 o'clock on Saturday, and not that I'm trying to influence your decision here, but Wood-Eye is already put in there 2-0 to Newcastle United. He's confident. He thinks it's going to be a win for Newcastle. Paul Gallant, member of the channel, fan of the channel, who's put, I'm hoping for 3 points tomorrow. What do you think it's going to be come 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon?
Well, firstly, I want to say to Paul, because I know Paul's actually making the trip up to the game tomorrow. So, Paul, I really hope you do get the 3 points and enjoy the game tomorrow. So, really, really hope you enjoy the new atmosphere, because I don't know if it's your first game since, the flags are all there. So you'll love it, mate. You really, really will. It's funny you put up the comment there about the 2-0. I actually believe Newcastle will win 2-0 tomorrow. I know Chris Hall's mentioned it as well. He thinks 2-0 tomorrow as well. I am actually confident. We've had a hard run, some tough away games, and obviously then it was Man City sandwiched at home in between as well. So do you know, if you'd asked us, we've got 6 points from our start. I think people were looking between 6 and 9 when you saw those first 5 games. Everyone was saying you've got a really hard start of the season, and we did, because we know Brighton's a hard place to go, Liverpool's a hard place to go, Man City's a hard game, full stop, whether it's at home or away, and Wolves can be a tricky place to go. We haven't got much sometimes down there. We've scraped a couple of draws in recent years since we've both been promoted. So we've got to make St James's Park that fortress, as both me and Keith touched on since this calendar year. It's our home form is phenomenal, and I believe that will be the case tomorrow as well. The Palace have got some really talented, gifted players, and can hurt you on the day. I look at how Eddie Howe set up against them when they came up last season. Zaha was quiet when he played. I was actually quite, I was really shocked how bad he was on the day. Not necessarily saying that's going to say it was. He's going to be like that tomorrow. I'd like Bruno to get under his skin again, like him and Almiron did just before the goal in the last game when they visit. It'd be nice to see that. Wow. But no, I just think Newcastle will have far too much quality tomorrow at St James's.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you. I've got to be honest. Paul Gallagher said, "Yeah, I'm hoping for 3 points," and then all of a sudden he's putting on 4-0, smacking. I love it, Paul. You know what? For your sake, Paul, like from what Richie's just said, and the fact that you're travelling up to St James's Park, I really, really hope it's.
And he's actually filming tomorrow outside the ground as well. So enjoy your first experience of that as well, Paul.
Definitely make sure you share that, Paul. You're filming on the day. Loaded Mag NUFC will sure to be supportive with your filming on that day. That is for sure. Look, I'm going to go for Doug. The Toon is gone for 3-1. Tangy Vivid is gone for 3-1 to us. Carl Segi is gone for 2-0. Great to have you on, Carl Segi. Always a massive supporter of the channel, no doubt about it. But look, there's other predictions in there that I'm just going to hold.
Yeah, Simon's went 3-0. Obviously, sponsors of the channel, always appreciated. Simon 3-0 tomorrow. You're going down, as you said, Tangy Vid, Geordie Toon for life, on as usual. 3-0. 3-0 by Nakamura as well. There's not much coming in here, any support for Palace, which is what I like to see, as you said. So as I said, Chris was in there as well somewhere as well. He put his 2-0 on as well. There you go. Doug the 2 was asking his score. Chris says 2-0. So not much people giving hope for Palace tomorrow.
And that's interesting, because I'm going to come to Keith. I'm going to come to you, because you're normally a guy that sits on the fence with regards to results like this. When we're predicting, there's been a lot of positivity in the chat tonight. I've got to be honest. Do you hold that same positivity, or are you going to be a little bit more reserved in your opinion of how the game's going to unfold?
I think it could be a nervy affair, definitely. Because
I knew it.
Well, I can see 1-0 either way, or I can see a draw, because Palace have gave, just saying earlier again, Anfield, City of Manchester Stadium, against the best 2 teams of certainly the last 5-6 years, gave Liverpool very lucky to get that point back, especially when they had a man sent off. And for that first half, they beat City. That first half, and it took Erling Haaland in the second half to get going, to really put them against the sword. Crystal Palace as well have scored against every team they've played this season, apart from Arsenal in the opening day of the season. But there's a lot going on. I mean, do you think as well with Crystal Palace at the minute that there's issues behind the scenes? You know, a little bit of discontent. You know, I'm thinking of Zaha with his post-match comments in the last game, where they threw it away. You know, they threw the 3 points away and they only got the 2. You know, there's a lot going on there, really. I think, but potentially behind the scenes.
I think it's one thing to keep saying in the dressing room, where it's you know, it's accepted. What stays in the dressing room stays in the dressing room. To say it on camera like that, you know, you are calling people out, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think you'll ever see any Newcastle players do that. They wouldn't dare. I don't think Eddie Howe would stand for it. You'd probably see them on the bench the following game if it was something like that would happen. So it's a possibility. But at the same time, it's, you know, he's potentially thinking, well, look, I'm getting the goals for you at the other end. We need to be doing something at the other end. So it's probably that, you know, it's where you would have Eddie Howe talk. Everyone was trying to get a reaction out of Eddie Howe the night when we lost to Liverpool. And you know, he says, oh, everyone was in the press conference. He looked really calm after the game. And he's like, nah, I wasn't inside. But he's that professionally knows what he has to say. And perhaps that's what, sometimes when you've been caught in the moment and it's still raw and still new after a game, people express their views potentially not the way they want to, and I think Zaha was definitely caught out by that the other night. Definitely.
Yeah, I think and just this little side issue, for another show, but talking about managing the media and what you're saying, what Brendan Rodgers has been saying recently about Leicester's surprises and threw us off as well. You know, in the last few days, saying Leicester aren't as good as they were, on the same club as they were a few years ago. Again, it just sends out the wrong message. But going back to the prediction, I actually think it could, despite the scares, it could be a narrow win for Newcastle tomorrow. It could be maybe a 2-1 tomorrow, because I just think that, you know, to go to Anfield and, you know, to get an extra time and to take 98 minutes to get ahead and to go behind Liverpool, and for Liverpool to beat Newcastle with the last kick, you've got to get confidence from them sort of games, really, to think how far they've actually came up. So I think Isak could be the man again tomorrow, and in 2 games in a row could get he could at least get 1 goal, and I think Newcastle could get the narrow win 2-1.
I think the interesting point you touched on was about how Palace have hurt Man City and Liverpool at their place this year. I think the difference being is, I think Trippier is a lot more experienced as a defender than, say, Kyle Walker and Trent Alexander. They're not renowned for being the best defenders as such, whereas you'll still see Trippier putting his body on the line. But I also will expect Eddie Howe to be drilling it into his defence, that they've hurt them, and they can be. But the thing is, though, we're not as, I would say, yet, we're not as attacking adventure-wise from the full-backs as potentially what those are. You know, Man City in particular tend to leave the 2 centre-backs and potentially Rodri in front, do you know, and then have lots of gaps, and they tuck the full-backs in, and you've got that space, and we don't do that, so it's a little bit trickier for, you know, Zaha to potentially have his own way tomorrow.
Definitely. Look, I'll be honest with you. I've been completely blinded by the fact that actually Keith has predicted this to win. So
yellow. I've got to start wearing yellow, a lot more brighter colours, positivity.
That's it. Those Brazilian colours to back our Brazilian boys. That's what I love to see. Yeah. And look, for me, that's good. That's good enough. The fact that you're predicting this to win, I am more than happy with that. And I think every fan in the chat and is on the panel would take that all day long. Doesn't matter how we win, just as long as we get those 3 points, and those 3 points are on the board to take us right up the table. But for me, I'm going to stick with my prediction. I went on with Dion back in the nest, and I gave my prediction. I said I thought we'd win 1-0. I thought it would be a tight game. with Crystal Palace, a little bit like it was midweek in the game in the back end of the season. But I think we'll win. I really do. I think the boys will be up for it. And I think we'll get the result that we need to kind of kick us on and move us forward. So let's be positive and let's hope for those 3 points at the end of the game at sort of a 5 o'clock Saturday evening. But yeah, Simon Rudd is in the chat, very much so. I can get you a couple of Brazilian yellow loaded mag t-shirts, of course. And I've already ordered one. I just need to send that money over to you, Simon, to make sure that I get that.
I think we've all said we'll have one, haven't we? It's definitely the best one, that yellow one. It's just.
I literally, when it came out, I said, I messaged Simon. I was like, I need to get that Brazilian away day shirt. Like, we need to get that.
I said the same as well. I said that top's Brazilian, and every time I said it's Brazilian. It really is.
100%. You know what? Why not do that? Why not get an away days t-shirt Brazilian on it? Why not?
Yeah.
Simon, you know what to do. Brazilian. Away days Brazilian t-shirt. I'll buy the away days Brazilian shirt right now. But if you get an away days Brazilian shirt, I'll buy that too. And look, they are available.
The right tune is Brazilian, something like that.
Yeah, why not? And look, Simon, we'll leave it in your capable hands to make sure that that's a possibility. I'm sure it will be because, look, you're a fantastic sponsor of the channel. And let's get to that right now. So, massive thanks to Shyburns, www.shyburns.com. Make sure, if you haven't already, get involved in that channel on that website and check out the fantastic gear that is available from Shyburns. It is all about supporting mental health. Okay, it's not a dirty secret, as it says on that top there. Mental health is very, very important. We need to support each other, and we need to show our support for those that are struggling with mental health. We are absolutely proud of the likes of Simon and being a channel that supports mental health in itself. So please show your support for Simon and the channel in itself. We also have, and we just talked about it, the away days t-shirts. Yes, we do love playing away. And there are some fantastic t-shirts there. We haven't got the Brazilian shirt on here right now, but no doubt we will have it on here before we do our next away day show next week. But also, we have some fantastic support of the channel from Pins and Prints. I've talked about this before. Some of their pins and some of their prints are absolutely fantastic. You've just seen Craig Bellamy and Ben Arthur. We also have the prints and the fantastic goal from Fabian Shaw. I'm waiting now. I said to you guys as well, I'm waiting for the Fabian Shaw goal, but now waiting for the Alan St-Maximin goal as well. So Pins and Prints, you know what to do. And there's some fantastic mix and matches as well with some of the old kits, as always. And of course, Marty from Machine House. We cannot forget these guys. They're fantastic supporters of the channel, always supporting the channel and promoting what we do. Please get involved in some of their clothing line. Their clothing line is the best around. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, show your support for Machine House because they do so much for us. And because you guys love Loaded so much, it's so important for us that you show your love and support for Machine House as well. Of course, become a member. We've had some members recently in the last few days. Click that blue button and join for $1.99 a month. Become a Loaded member and join our family. And of course, we are on the march for 5K. Look, for us to be 5K in less than a year and a half, being in existence for Newcastle United content would mean the absolute world for us at Loaded Mag NUFC. So just click that subscribe button. One or two new joiners in the chatters tonight. Click that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to the channel so you can see all the content that we have available, and you're able to join the chat for all the shows that we have available to us. Don't be afraid to do that. We have so much content that will be available in the weeks to come as well. Look, at this point now, is there anything that you guys want to end on before we end this show?
I think we've crammed as much as we could for the game content in the last 2 hours, mate.
We really did. We really did, for sure. But as always, look, Keith, massive thanks to you. 00 Stato, always coming in with the stats. And look, we've got Carl Seggy as a member. Thank you for joining us and becoming a member of the Loaded family. Massively appreciate it. Keep an eye on the shows that are coming up, because there are plenty that will be available in the weeks and days and weeks to come. But look, Keith, massive thanks to you for all of your stats. You are a fantastic supporter of the channel, and it's great to have you as a part of Away Days. Your stats and your responses that you get when you join the chat during the show is an absolute joy. And I hope
the compilation. I'm looking forward to the compilations and reactions.
It has to be done. It has to be done. And I'm sure Daz has been watching, and I'm sure it will be put together very, very shortly. There's no doubt about it. But Richie, as always, a pleasure. Great opinions, great knowledge, as always. And look, of course, us three, we're praying for those 3 points on Saturday. So hopefully we're back on Saturday talking about 3 points, moving up the table. Everything's great. Players are getting fit, but we'll see before that. But look, as always, pleasure to speak to you all and have everyone in the chat. I'm going to let you go. Enjoy your Friday evening. And of course, we do love playing away. You guys take care. Speak to you soon.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.